Good afternoon or good evening, guys. I'm about to start with the integrated project. I'm actually starting. So, to start off, I believe we all remember. Anyway, so per this project, I think it's a continuation of the first one. So, with this one, we are transforming data. Let's just dive in. So, we import the data as I have already done here. So, let's move to the second one. So to observe which shares are represented, we sort by name and year. So I believe most of you have been able to do this, but let me just run through for the benefit of um, everyone. So over here, it says that if we sort without considering the row containing column names, they are sorted with the other rows, and it might not end up where we expect it to be. So to avoid this, right click on row one, view, that's a lot. So think what's per the instructions on here, we are supposed to select all the table in order to sort for everything to work. We select the whole table before we sort. So we press Control A to select all the table. We go to data and then sort range and then advanced range sort options. All of these are indicated on here. So data sort range, advanced range sort options. So the first one, we have to sort by name, and then the second one will be by year. So originally it will be like this without you indicating that they have it. So once you check data has header row, it changes. So the first one sorts by name, that is correct, A to Z. And then the second one we sort by year, also A to Z. Then we sort. So we are done with this part. Let's move on to the next one. So in the next one, we are supposed to calculate what's the name? The year difference. So we have to create a new column called year difference as Y difference. Okay. And then to calculate it is the year n plus one minus year n. So where n is the row number. So in this case, year n is 1 plus 1 minus year 1. So year 2 minus year 1. That is actually what it's trying to say. So equal to, in this case, this is year 2 for Afghanistan. So year 2 is 2020, and then year 1 is 2015. Right. It gives us the year difference. Okay. Now the next thing is we have to use an if statement to only subtract 2 years if the country in name is the same for the new feature for year difference. We all observe that over here we're having some positive and negative values, but we're supposed to have only one country. So in so doing, it's been stated that we have to use the if statement to take it out. So what we are going to do is we already have this calculation, and that is correct. So what we'll do is we'll say if this calculation, or first we'll say if this country is equal to this country, then the value should be the difference as we've calculated. If not, it should bring an empty space, right? So we'll begin with an if, and then we open the brackets. Now the logical expression is if this country, sorry. So Afghanistan is A2, and then the same Afghanistan is A3. So if A2 is equal to A3, right, we bring a comma. If the value is true, this expression should hold. If not, repeat an empty space. Okay, and then we hit enter. So we'll have to run it through in order for the changes to take effect, right? So we'll just drag it down to the bottom. Unfortunately, this one didn't give us the autofill, so we can literally drag it to the bottom and we're done. So we now find out that most of everything has been corrected. We don't have the negatives again. think I have to freeze this row. Let me freeze row 1, and then I'll also freeze this column. The column I'm freezing it's for my own reason, not for any other reason, right? Okay. So we are done with this first bit. Okay. And then moving on to the second one, there's the formula we use. So if Afghanistan is equal to Afghanistan, then the year difference, which is year 2 minus year 1, that should be the if this statement is true, it should bring out this value. If not, it should bring out this. Right? That is what we just did in the previous one. Now we find out that year difference, we have 0 in there, and it states here that if that is the case, then they are duplicate rows. So we need to remove the ones that are duplicate. So the only thing we'll do is that we will filter the year difference, clear all, and then check 0 and okay. So we realize that with Zimbabwe, there are some duplicates. Okay. Now it says that we have to find and remove the erroneous duplicate. So definitely I'm just going to do it. We will delete this and this. Okay. So we are done. And then we remove the filter. We have our data back. We are done this with this part. So we are told to create a new summary sheet. Okay, so let's do that. On your spreadsheet, you click on the plus at the lower left corner. Let's rename it to summary sheet. And let's go back to the table. It says we have to calculate the average year difference across all countries, rounded to 2 decimal places. And then we'll calculate minimum and maximum year difference, right? So first is average year difference. So average year difference, and then minimum and maximum. So minimum and then maximum, right? So we all know the formula for average year difference. I mean average, okay? But in this case, we are working on year difference. So equal to average, and then we come back to where we are supposed to do the calculation. So on year difference, I'll just highlight the whole column, and then I'll hit enter. We are getting this issue because in here, I believe we are having some challenge. So it stated that, I think over here, it stated that we have, after we removed the duplicates, we had some issues that we were supposed to drag the new, we have to drag the new formula, the if statements that we earlier on worked on. We are supposed to just drag it through. So let me just drag this one through like this, and we are sorted. It will automatically calculate the average difference for us, but let's do it again. So equal to average, and then let's select y difference, enter. So we have 4.79, but we are supposed to 2 decimal places. Where is that? Rounded to 2 decimal places. Okay, so we are just going to decrease the decimal places with this, and then we are done for year difference. Now let's move to minimum. As we already know, equal to minimum. We come to estimated use of water. We select y difference. We are done. Then we go to max. We do same for max, right? Come back to estimate use of water. Select the column, enter. We are done. Okay, so we are done for average, minimum, and maximum year difference. There are some questions here we need to answer, but let's move on. So in the newly created sheet, we have to create a histogram of the year column. Note that the minimum and maximum values, note the minimum and maximum value on the horizontal axis. So we are creating a histogram of the year column. So we come to the estimated use of water. In this case, I'll just highlight the whole year column, and then I will insert a chart. Well, we're creating a histogram. Select histogram chart. Now we're done. Okay. Technically, we are not done, but this is how the data is going to be. Okay. We'll just come in here to customize it. I think we all understand this bit after following webinar with Nolwazi. So the bucket size should be 1. So meaning it's taking it individually. Then the outliers 0%, right? So we are done. This is how it's going to look like, okay? And I don't think there is anything we're supposed to do. So it said the notes the minimum and maximum values on the horizontal axis, okay? So minimum and maximum. So this is the maximum 2015. Why is it not giving the value? So we have 2015 representing maybe 200 or 225 plus. I don't even know why this is not popping up. Okay. Let me see. Right. So for 2015, we have 231, and then 2020, 213. So we realize those are the minimum and maximum years, right? Okay. So let's move on, please. Now we have to calculate the annual rate of change. Okay, we'll just go straight forward. I think we all can read all this for ourselves. So let's just go straight forward to the calculation. So we're supposed to create annual rate of change for national, rural, and urban. Okay, and we'll calculate using water-based N in the case for annual rate of change for national, and then we'll use water-based R for rural, and then water-based U for urban. So let's just dig in. I'll create a copy of this histogram and put it on the new summary sheets and take this off. We're working with this data. So, right. So the new table, the new column we are going to create is ARCU. So ARC-N. Let's start with N first. And then we'll create ARC_U. And then, no, it's supposed to be rural before urban. So ARC-R. Whichever case, I think we're not wrong. ARC_U. So it can be rural before urban, urban before rural. It doesn't really matter. So this is the formula we're going to use. Over here, it says the annual rate of change is whatever we are trying to calculate the change on. Okay, so we'll take the year 2 of that and then the year 1 of that. That's the difference. And then we'll divide by also the difference in the years. Okay, so in this case, this is how it's going to look like. So equal to, let's open a bracket. So first is we are calculating for N. So water-based N for year 2 minus water-based N for year 1. Let's close the bracket. And then we'll divide by year 2, which is 2020. Let's open another bracket. 2020 minus 2015. And then we close it. We hit enter. Okay. So this is what we have now. Let me check autofill. And then this is the value for ARC-N. I'll have to do the same for R and we'll have to do the same for U. But when we come back here, yes, we've already created the 3 columns. So what we have to do is, because the 2 years are taken into consideration, they're having the same challenge we faced when we created the Y difference, right? So we have to use the same formula to be able to provide the values just for years as we did for the Y difference. Okay, so we use the same formula. I think we all should be able to do this by now. So it will be if, and in this case, we'll still use if Afghanistan, which is A2. I think when you click it, it will take off, it will move out there. Or let me click it here rather. Okay, if Afghanistan is equal to Afghanistan, you return the value that we have already calculated, right? If that is true, but if it's not true, we'll bring it now. Sorry, we'll bring an empty space and then we're done. Okay, how do we do the autofill? There's a control enter. It's not working. Regardless, so we just click and then we drag it down. Okay. Right, we're done. But I think we still have another issue because uh, we have some error in the column we are supposed to take care of. I think I saw one. This is one here, which is not supposed to be. We'll create challenges when calculating when calculating anything in here. So what we are supposed to do is we'll use for that one, the formula to use is an if error. This is the formula we use to calculate what we just did. So I think this is the same thing, but we observe value errors in here. So in order to take it out, we'll use the if error, okay? And then we'll convert this value to null, because with null, at least we can still do our calculation. So we'll still use the initial formula, okay? We use the initial formula, but we start with if error, okay? So if there is an error, in all that we've calculated here, which is this value, now this becomes the value in here. This value is all of this, okay? If there is an error in this value, okay, return now instead of this, which indicates an error, okay? So I'll press enter and then we'll pull it down again in order to correct everything in here. Okay, so I believe that should be it. So now let's check to see if we can see any error in there. Right, so initially it was error. If I should undo it, oh, sorry, I thought it would return at the same place, but that is row, right, this is row 18. Initially it was this if I undo, but then if I redo after putting in the formula we have now, we are good with this, right? We are supposed to do the same thing for ARCR and ARCU, but we'll realize that with calculating all of this, we will still be using this country and the year. This is going to remain constant in all the formulas that we're going to calculate, right? So what we are going to do now is we will create an absolute function. Okay, we will lock both columns. In this case, we are not locking the column just to represent only Afghanistan or 2015 and 2020. Okay, but I'm trying to do this in case we move. Now, before explaining it, let's see something. If I move, take a look at this column. I mean, at this function that we've just created, right? If I should move it to the next column, okay. Now look at how the formula came out. Okay, there has been some changes in here, and in here. Compare it to this and see. Now this is A2, A3, E3, E2, B3, B2. But when you come here, we have B2, B3, F3, F2, C3, C2. Okay, so the reason why we are going to create this absolute formula is that it will prevent this shift when we move this function into the next column. Okay, so what we are going to do is we will lock just the row, just the column and not the row. Okay, if we lock the row and the column, it means that even after moving it, this is never going to change. And when you pull it down, when you pull the formula down for you to run through, it will still be static on Afghanistan, but that is not what we want to do. Okay, we want it to, when we shift it to a column, it should just be static. But when we are trying to pull it down to duplicate or to replicate the functions in here, it should be able to move accordingly. Okay, so in order to do that, I am using a del, and usually when you press F4, it creates the absolute function. So when I press F4 now, it wraps both the column and the row, but in this case we only want the column. So I'll press the F4 again, and then it shifts to the row. And that is not what I want. So I'll press the F4 again, and then it will shift to the column name, right? Alternatively, we can just use the $sign straightforward. Okay. So instead of pressing the F4, not to confuse you guys, but instead of pressing the F4, you just come in front of the A2, and then you insert the $sign for A2, and then you come here, you insert the $sign also, right? So in this case, we've locked this column. So when we shift the function to the next column, this is not going to shift. Now, this is for the country. And we also have to do the same thing for the year, because we realize that this is also going to remain constant. Okay. So we come here, year is in the B column. So in front of B3, we bring in the $sign, and then the same thing for B2 as well. And we hit enter. Okay. So now let's drag it to the next column and see what is going to happen. So we see here that A2 and A3 didn't change, and B3 and B2 didn't change, because that is what we're actually going to work with. But the only change we had was F3 and F2, because initially it was E2, and the column, the column after E, the column after E is F, right? So that is how come we have this. Now, to work for annual rate of change for R, we use water-based R. Okay, so the only thing we are going to do is we'll look for where water-based R is at the I column. Okay, so the only thing we are going to do in here is to change F to I. Okay, F to I, and we are done. We are done. So you can hit, what's the name? You can check the autofill, and then we are done. Okay, then we'll also drag this to U. We realize we still maintain the country and the year, but the difference is in here. It moved from I to J. Okay, now water-based U is at M, so we'll only change the J to M, and we should be fine. Yeah, so we are good, right? So we're done with the calculation for arc N, arc R, and then arc U. Let's go back to the slide deck. So after calculating all this, we have to calculate the average, minimum, and maximum for each of the ERC values. Okay, for the basic services level, for each of the three population groups. So we'll do for ARC and R and U. Okay, now this is how I just did my this is what we are going to work on. So I'll just copy ARCN, ARCR, and ARCU. I'll put it somewhere here. Okay, let me push this a bit far. I'll put it somewhere here, and then let me style it up a little bit. So I'll put this in the border. Let me put some color here. Let me use, which one should be nice? I'm a guy. I'll use blue. No, this is too dark. Can't see it. Let me use whichever way. I'm just styling it. It shouldn't create any problem, right? And then let me style here up as well. I'm just doing this my own purposes, not for any other reason. So average, minimum, and maximum. So we'll put average here. We'll put minimum, and then maximum. Let me bolden it. I just want it to stand out. Okay, so let's calculate average for ARCN. So the formula is equal to average, and then you're doing for R, you just select the whole column, you press enter. Okay, now in this case, you realize that when you come here, I did a calculation for ARCN, ARCR, and ARCU. Okay, so they are all, they follow each other. So the easiest we can do is over here, the formula is in ARCN. Okay, this calculation that we did for ARCN. So we can then drag this through, and then we should be free. Okay, so this was for column R, where we calculated the ARCN. This should move to column S, where I calculated the ARCR. And this should move to T, also where we calculated the ARCU. Okay, so we are done with that one. There's no need to calculate it one by one. We'll do the same thing for the minimum. We select ARC end, enter, and then we just drag it through. And then we'll do the same for maximum. Oh, no. Maximum. We won't select that. Okay, so this we come, and then we check the column, we hit enter. And then let's drag it through. Great. So we are done for this right here. This one. Okay, let's move to the next. This is something we can discuss when we do the walkthrough later on. So let me just move ahead and then let's deal with the calculation. So we are now to calculate the number of countries per area that have full access and annual rate of change equal to 0, smaller than 0, and greater than 0. Okay, so in the summary sheet, we'll calculate the number of countries that have missing ARC values. That is the number of null occurrences. Okay, so we are going to calculate the number of null occurrences in our ARC values. Okay, so what we'll do is, let me come here and type now. We are coming to count now in ARCN, ARCR, and ARCU. Okay, so in doing this, we'll use the count if function. Okay, now the count if is saying that if the range that is from here, if through this range we find now, okay, count the values of now in this range, or the number, let me say the number of now in this range that we selected. Okay, so we are counting this one with now being the criteria that we want. Okay, so if we find now in the range that we selected, you should bring the number of nows in there. So that is 2. And as we did for the average, minimum, and maximum, we'll just drag this through and we're done. Okay, so this is the count of now in ARCN. We got only 2 nows, ARCR 64, ARCU 50. If you have time, you can just count it manually. You just have to filter here. Okay, clear all, look for now. Yes. And then count it manually. So once we highlight it, we see 64 here. You come to summary sheet, you see 64. You know you're good to go, right? So let's remove the filter and continue. So we are done calculating the countries with null occurrences. So in the summary sheet, also calculate the number of countries that have full access across both years. That is the number of countries where access is 100% for both years reported, where 100% access for both years reported. But before we do this, we should know that, well, it's even stated here, right, that for the 100%, some might be more than 100%, as in the previous part of the project that we did, the one we did and submitted last week, or was it Tuesday? We have access to basic water service entries that are greater than 100%, which is not possible. So we'll have to round it up, right? Okay, so let's come here. Before we do that calculation, we have to round it up. So let's create water-based N rounded, water-based R rounded, and water-based U rounded, all in new columns. Okay, so water-based N rounded, water-based R also rounded, and then water-based U, right? Water-based U also rounded. So this is what we're going to work with. We already know the formula, right? So yes, so equal to round and then water-based N. So let's look for water-based N, that is here. So let's select the whole column and hit enter. We'll check. Okay, but we realize there's an error in here. So because of this error, we'll have to use the if error function.